and welcome to Hiding Behind the Music Stand. I'm your host, Patty Ryan, and with me is Guilherme Andreas, but colloquially goes by Andreas, who is a flutist based in New York City, primarily concertizing and touring nationally and internationally, as well as teaching privately. He just released an album called Beyond Bossa Nova, which is available for purchase on any streaming platform. We'll be talking about that in a second, but we will also be talking about weightlifting. Welcome, Andreas. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Absolutely. So we met because you kind of reached out to me and said, hey, would you consider me to be on your show? And
yes.
I was like, absolutely. You're introducing me to this album. Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
Absolutely. The whole idea for this album started when I was invited to be a lecturer at Duke University in 2015. They have a conference about Brazil that happens every 2 years. And in 2015, they wanted a classical musician from Brazil that was based in the US. And then someone found me. So I went there, I performed the recital. And after that, I was like, well, I actually should do something else about this. I should record an album about, with the music that I performed. Because I had to do a little research of the music. But then I started performing all over the US, the same repertoire. And one of the recitals that I played, it was in Lancaster. There was a journalist there. And she came to talk to me after the recital. And she was like, well, I saw that you were going to perform Brazilian music. And I came here expecting to hear Bossa Nova. But I didn't. It was Beyond Bossa Nova.
Gotcha.
And it was like, oh, yes, it was. It was just classical music. And that's how the name for the album actually came out. It's only classical music from Brazil by a lot of composers that people don't know much about it. And my idea was to be very, very inclusive. So besides, of course, Brazil is a country in South America, but there is white composers, there is black composers, there is native indigenous composers, there is queer composers, there's women, there's, everything. I just wanted to be very inclusive and very
representing Brazil, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Besides Villa-Lobos, people basically just know Villa-Lobos, right? If we talk about classical music, which I actually recorded, Bachianas 5.
Sure.
But there's so much more, and it was people were just so welcoming, to the music. Every time it was oh my God, where's this music from? Because it doesn't sound Brazilian, but only because people have this reference that Brazilian music is just bossa nova,
So that was one of my questions. Is it really a stereotype that people think that only Brazilian music is bossa nova?
It is,
okay,
which is great at some point, but at the same time too, it's well, there is more, it's not just Girl from Ipanema,
Right.
So that's how the whole idea for the album came out.
Yeah, and you have a collaborator, right?
I do. Her name is Jeanne Gezu. We've met at James Madison University. We kind of switched schools at some point because she went to Peabody for her bachelor's and master's. I went to JMU for my master's, but then I went to Peabody for another degree, and then she went to JMU for her doctorate.
Oh, funny.
Right. And that's how we met. When I performed at Duke University, I brought her with me, and then we just started collaborating. So we performed, many places in the US, and actually we recorded the whole thing at JMU as well, which was awesome. Just felt so great.
Back at home a bit.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. So can you tell us, since it just released-ish, right?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us how we can get a hold of your album.
First of all, just go on my website. It's justmyname.com. So it's GUILHERM as Mary E. And then Andreas, ANDREAS.com. So it's available everywhere, Spotify, Apple Music, what else? So many platforms now, I forget.
Yeah.
And physical copies, we had a little delay, but it's going to be available next month. Right now in October, probably October 3rd.
Okay. Awesome. Congratulations on such an accomplishment.
Thank you. It's so hard.
Yeah.
I never thought it would be so hard to put music together and record and the process so stressful. But at the same time, as musicians, we kind of have to make it sound that it's easy. So it's such a hard process, but I was happy, and I'm not very happy usually with my playing, but for that album, yes, I was very happy.
Good.
Yes.
Well, that's That's really wonderful. Is there any other questions I should ask about your album that I forgot to?
If you think, like, for instance, asking about any of the composers, because, for instance, there was a story of one of the pieces is that it's called Nostalgia. And the name of it is because, like, the guy who actually wrote the music, he was accused of being a communist spy in Brazil. So he had to be exiled in Russia. And he wrote Nostalgia because he was missing Brazil. So he was accused by, you know, the military dictatorship in Brazil. And he passed away before the dictatorship ended. So he passed away in 1985 and the dictatorship ended in 1986.
Right.
So he never went back to Brazil. I don't know. That's like a story that like I usually say like in recitals and people cry, you know, because everyone's like longing for something. And when they hear the music, when they listen to the music, it's like, oh my God, you know, people always like, oh my God. The last piece was written by Clarice Assad.
Oh, I know her.
Heard,
yeah.
Right?
I've played with her. Yeah.
Here we go. She actually wrote
wonderful.
The music.
Yeah.
She's absolutely amazing. So she wrote that for Yo-Yo Ma. It's called The Last Song. And she wrote that piece for Yo-Yo Ma. And then I actually emailed her and I was like, hey, how can I purchase the music? Like I can literally just transpose whatever for flute. She called me. She was like, hey, this is Clarice. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, she's super friendly. Yeah, she's wonderful.
She is. Or Patapio Silva, also like, he was a black flutist, but he was extremely successful in 18 something. There is no record of a black flutist being successful in 1890 something. There's this confusion sometimes too. Like people don't know that like in Brazil, like there's people from everywhere as well. And the biggest black population that was brought from Africa is not in the US. It's in Brazil. And also there's a lot of things like the biggest Japanese community, the biggest Lebanese community. There's a lot of Germans. There's a lot of Jewish. So Brazil is very diverse, right?
Yes, yeah.
But his story is like very interesting because, you know, like it was the end of slavery in Brazil too. He was like a virtuoso and he started writing for flute, but not in a way that was like explored before in Brazil or in other countries. So like he got access to the flute, the model flute that we have nowadays. So like his music is very virtuosic. And then he got like very, very successful. So we have many people now. We have Valerie Coleman, we have Damar McGill, we have, you know, Brandon Patrick, we have so
Lizzo.
many like
Just kidding.
Lizzo, absolutely. No, yeah, absolutely Lizzo, you know. But there is not really like record of a black flutist. It doesn't matter if like it's a black person from Brazil or from the US or a black flutist, you know.
Yeah, right.
In 19 something, like very beginning of like the century, being successful. He was extremely successful in Brazil. He was like traveling and he was actually about to travel to Europe, but then he got a disease and then he died. He was 35.
Wow.
He was very young. So like his music's like, in my opinion, amazing. Like explores the flute in like its full potential in terms of sound, in terms of like technique, you know. If people listen to his piece, that the one that I recorded actually, you're going to see like, it's called Oriental, which means like from the East, you know, in Portuguese, but like it's full of like scales and like there's a huge cadenza. It doesn't sound like people think of Brazilian music at all. You know, it's like very like, you know, lots of notes. At least to me, it's absolutely amazing that he was like so successful, like right at the end of slavery in Brazil, just making himself available like for concerts and like, you know, already writing music, having his music being published. I think like his story is like fascinating and I just would like to, you know, share more about his music and, you know, his story as well.
His legacy, really, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Especially nowadays that we're like waking up to, you know, black composers, like women composers or like gay composers or even foreign composers, you know, that people that actually have like foreign stories. Like I'm a foreign person in the US, right? So I'm an immigrant. And like, for instance, one of the other pieces that I recorded was the sonata by Leopoldo Miguez. And his name sounds Spanish, but because although he was born in Brazil, his father was from Spain. So there is this whole thing, and then he became kind of very popular in Brazil too. He was sponsored by the emperor at the time because Brazil became a republic not long ago. And then he was sponsored to go to Europe to study there. And he actually got in touch with people that were like, you know, Debussy, and like he studied with Debussy's professor, and he met Fauré, he met, you know, all of these big names that we have nowadays. And then he wrote this sonata in 1896. it's very interesting because that's exactly the time when César Franck wrote his sonata. That's when Brahms wrote his Sonata number 3 for violin. That's when Saint-Saëns wrote his sonata for violin as well. I think number 2. All these big names. And he also wrote a sonata for violin that's like 30 minutes of music.
Yeah.
It's romantic music, you know. And it was actually published in Germany, you know. So there was this whole story about like being a foreign musician.
Yeah.
He was in France for a long time. And then he went back to Brazil and all. But, you know, I think like those kind of things, like I just wanted to share, like there's so many stories. And, you know, I just feel like if their music is performed, their legacy is still with us and alive and, you know, can be celebrated. If not, it's just going to be music on the paper, right?
Right.
Like it's going to be just...
It's unheard, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that was like primarily my intention. My purpose is to share this music that actually no one has access to this music. And it's beautiful music. And I just wanted to...
Sorry, I was just saying deserve to be heard. It deserves a platform.
Exactly.
Somewhere.
You know, of course, like I'm Brazilian, but that's not the point. I'm not trying to be nationalist. I'm not trying to be like, you know, patriot and be like, oh no, I'm from Brazil. Listen to this music. Yeah. No, that's not the point. You know, I know this composer is like from Brazil, but it doesn't sound this way or that way. It's music. It's only music, you know? Correct, it's supposed to just touch people and inspire them. You know, it's so many stories, and that was the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, well, again, congratulations. I hope that you're going to get a lot more people listening to your album soon.
Thank you, yeah. That's my hope, too.
Can you tell me what your most insane performance or audition story is?
Sure. You know, in Brazil, there is a show called Prelude. It would be, in Portuguese, it would be Prelúdio, right? So Prelude. And it's a reality show for classical musicians.
Oh.
And it's, it's almost like
why is there not an American
Idol.
of this?
I know. I always thought about this, but it's almost like an American Idol for classical music. So they run this thing and it's all instruments. It's not just for flute. Conducting as well sometimes. Oh. And it's a whole competition. They have like 4 or 5 rounds and the finals are like each winner from each round. And I was the winner in 2000. That was right before I moved to the US. So that was in 2014. It was crazy because, like, you know, you prepare, you like come to, you know, you like, I was playing the Reineck flute concerto and it was like ready to play, but then you get there and it's like, you know, makeup and then, you know.
Yeah, it's a whole other side.
Yeah, it's like cameras and lights and then there was like a panel of judges and they're like all like Simon, what's his name? Simon Cowell. Like, you know, oh no, this doesn't, you know, it didn't really go well. Like, you know, it was like, so, actually, my participation is on YouTube as well. So for my round, I was competing with a guitarist, a pianist, and a soprano. So the director of the show is this big maestro in Brazil. His name is Júlio Medalha. Most woodwind players know him as well because he is a composer as well. And he wrote like a wind quintet. And when I just remember like, I was so happy when I finished playing, he started saying like, he would talk to the piano and all that stuff. And he would be like, hey, what'd you think of the Ron Paul from Brasilia? It was like, Ron Paul? What? Like, you know, because Ron Paul, Jean-Pierre Ron Paul is like, you know, one of the best flutists like ever. And of course, like, I'm not saying that but it was like such a nice compliment, you know? Yeah. And he would be like, yeah, this person, like, what do you think of the Ron Paul from Brasilia? What do you think? And they were like, oh no, this and that, blah, blah. But it was nice. I wasn't thinking like I was going to win because like everyone was so good, but it was so nice to win. Like, you know, it was one of like the most like, fun things that happened to me. Like, it was crazy. Like just the process, like when you go for a competition, it's like so nerve-wracking and then you're just like competing and just playing, but like the extra stuff, like especially like the makeup and like it just makes you feel like, oh my god, what's gonna happen, you know? It's not just about the play and like, you know, you have to look good and like, you know, that was a fun thing. It's on YouTube, like, you know, if people want to look it up, it's on YouTube. Awesome.
No, I will certainly do that. I'm curious. That's kind of insane. You hit the nail on the head with that. Like, yeah, something that you would never expect to accomplish in your life, right? Kind of thing.
No, it's just because like it's a reality show. It's like, I don't know, Project Runway, you know, like doing the thing there, you know, with people there. And like people are like filming, you know, everything that you do. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, like, you know, what's happening now? It's like Big Brother.
Yeah.
You know?
So my question kind of is A, like, what was the prize that you won? And B, are you like super famous in Brazil because of it? Are you like the Kelly Clarkson of...
No, I'm popular. I'm not like super famous in Brazil, but I'm
like, you're recognized on the streets or something like that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, but you asked about what I won, right?
Oh yeah. What was your prize? Yeah.
Yeah. So the big prize was full scholarship to study at the Liszt Conservatory, but I already had won another national competition in Brazil at the time to come to the US. So I chose to come to the US.
Gotcha.
The one that brought me to the US, I won in 2013, but the reality show was in 2014, right before I came to the US. Because like the process was still going, I chose to move here anyways. Because at the time, I was a Marine musician. So in Brazil, I was a Marine for 5 years. So like, because like the scholarship to do my master's here was already, you know, guaranteed. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to go to the US and then the other stuff, like, you know, if it happens. If not, I'm already like going on with my life. Yeah. Okay. But the prize was that. It wasn't like, you know, money prize or something. I wish it was.
Or a record deal or something. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Again, thanks for sharing that story. Can I ask you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Can I ask you some Spitfire questions?
Sure.
Are you ready?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Robert Schumann or Johannes Brahms?
Brahms.
Tchaikovsky or Stravinsky?
Ooh, Tchaikovsky.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Apples or oranges?
Apples.
Favorite zoo animal to see?
Oh my God. The lion.
Oh, okay. Why?
They're like so powerful, but at the same time, like so chill.
Yeah.
Whenever you go see a lion, they're not like, you know, making any noise really, but you see them like, it's so like, you know, their presence, like when they come is like so like, you know, majestic, you know, but at the same time, they're like, you know, I know who I am, you know?
Yeah. I got you.
Right.
Comfortable in their own skin. Yeah.
Yes.
Fan favorite question. Favorite concerto for any instrument in any genre?
I absolutely love 2 concertos for flute. I'm being like biased right now, but
yeah, sure.
The Reinecke flute concerto for me, it's one of my favorites. Like I've won a competition in the US playing it, and I played it with orchestra. It was one of the best experiences of my life. You know, the other one is the Nielsen flute concerto as well.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Only one, right? I already said 2.
That's okay. We'll take 2. I'm not picky. Don't worry.
Okay.
Last show you would recommend to a friend?
I live very close to Broadway. So I go see Broadway shows like very often, fun. You know.
Yeah.
So the last one that I saw that I would recommend, like absolutely recommend, was Hadestown. And actually won a Tony, I think, last year.
Okay.
And I was not expecting the musical to be that good.
Oh, okay.
It was great. The music is amazing. It made me cry a lot, which is not hard to do anyways, because I...
Sure.
But, you know, it was beautiful. Like, the singing, the songs. You know, I love when you go to see a show or a musical and you know, leave the show and you're still singing the music.
Yeah.
You know, from the show.
Yeah.
So that's a show that, you know, to me, I'm like watching the show and like in my mind, I'm like analyzing the harmony. Yeah. I'm like analyzing the chord progression and like, you know, the orchestration and like, you know.
I do the same thing, honestly.
Right. You know, so like I don't have perfect pitch, but because practicing the flute so much, so like I don't know why, but I only can recognize like, you know, very high pitches. So like, you know, low pitch, I'm like very bad, but like high pitch I can recognize. So like, you know, they're sinking in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's a D. Oh my God. Okay.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's kind of common. Yeah. I think.
Right.
Yeah. Because you're so used to that particular range that you have like some perfect pitch based on how it feels or what.
Yeah. So that's a show that I would absolutely like recommend. If people can come to New York and like see that show, yes, cool. You will not regret it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Favorite Disney hero or heroine and villain?
Hero will be Mulan. Mulan has always been my favorite.
Yeah.
Always.
She's awesome.
Always like, she's absolutely awesome. And the music for the movie too, you know, it's so great. Yeah. I love so much. Villain, Scar.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, from the Lion King. Yeah. It's like people say, like, you know, you grow up, you think you're gonna be like Mufasa, but like you see yourself like being Scar, like in many moments of your life. Not the jealousy part,
no,
but like the other parts, like that he's always like, you know, kind of pissed off or like how people are like
shady.
doing dumb things, and just being shady. Yeah,
that's funny. All right, worst travel story?
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm ready.
When I was in the Marines in Brazil, I was principal flute of their symphony. Because like in Brazil, we kind of have a symphony like the President's Own in DC. It's a band, but it has strings. I used to travel a lot with them, which was awesome. But there was this day that we were traveling by bus and we stopped at this place and we all ate. The food was awesome. But then we all got food poisoning.
Oh, no. Oh, that's bad.
And the next stop was in 10 hours.
Oh, no, that's really bad. That's really bad. Oh, no. What happened?
So you can imagine how bad it was. Like the bathroom, everyone having like huge dysentery. Like it was really, really bad. And I even remember like after like the first stop, which was like 10 hours away, I was still not feeling well at all. And then we had to stop like mid of the night and I had to go to the bathroom. And I just remember like, I was like in the bathroom and then someone came and they're like, hey, because in the military, they used to call me Nascimento because that's my very last name. I have 4 names. That's another story, but I have 4 names. And they used to call me Nana. So they would be like, Nana, we have to go. We have to go. And I'd be like, what can I do? Like, you know, I literally have to get this thing out of me.
Yeah, like you gotta wait. Wait your turn.
Like, you're making us late, blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, it's the military. So like we have like a setup like schedule and all. But it was like, what I'm gonna do? Like, you know, I'm gonna poop myself like on this.
Exactly.
That was the worst, like one of my worst like travel experiences. Yeah, it was absolutely terrible.
That sounds horrible. I'm sorry. I'm glad we can laugh about it now, though.
I know, because it was like horrifying.
Yeah.
And you know, like stopping like middle of nowhere. It's the same, you know, you go in the bathroom, like you don't know like who has been there. Like so disgusting.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So I'm going to ask this next question, but I also noticed when I was going through your bio to get a little more acquainted with you that you actually know David Chu.
Do you know him?
I know, yeah. And that's why I was like, oh my God, that makes sense though, because he does travel to Brazil a lot, right?
Yes, yeah. He actually lives in Rio though.
Oh, okay,
Yes, he lives in Rio because I think like his wife is Brazilian.
Yeah, that's true.
He got a title of like Sir David Chu like a few years ago, like by, you know, when the Queen was alive.
Yeah.
He's now like Sir David Chu.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Ask your question because I can talk about him.
Oh, well, I don't know if this is the person you're going to select. I was just bringing him up because the question is favorite professor shout out.
Oh, well, talking about David Chu, it's the cellist, right?
Yes,
so he's amazing.
Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing. Yeah. So when I was in Brazil, one of my degrees is in chamber music and he was my mentor. So like the whole program was like just chamber music, like a little research, but a lot of performing. Yeah. He was so musical.
Yeah.
His
kind spirit too.
He is. He's so nice. But professor shout out. I had many like great professors, but I'm gonna say though, someone that really changed my life was Odette Ernest Dias. She is French, but she has been in Brazil since 1952. She's a legend. She's still alive. She's like 94 maybe right now. But she's French from Paris. She went to the Paris Conservatory. She won the Geneva competition in 1950 something. And then she moved to Brazil when there were a lot of people moving to Brazil because of like, you know, it was a place to be in terms of like orchestras and all blah, blah, blah. And she never left. But like I don't know, just like her personality, she's like, you know, those people that like, they're just themselves, but like their energy is so good. Like they have so much to teach and they have so much to talk about. Just the way they do things, you just learn from them. Like, you know, I don't know, just feel inspired.
Yeah.
She was was someone like that. She was always like inspiring me. She was like pushing me to do things. But yeah, to me, it was just like, just good to be around her, you know? And when I started getting lessons from her, she was already 80 something, I think. And she was still playing the flute, like a lot of things from memory. And then I remember my first experience with her, I went to play for her and she was like, oh, good. Like with a very thick French accent in Portuguese. And then she goes, what do you play from memory? I was like, I don't play anything from memory. She was like, no. Every flutist has to play something from memory.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay.
Yeah.
And she was like, for now, my next lesson with you, like, you have to play something from memory. Sea Hunks. Do you know Sea Hunks? It's the Debussy solo piece for flute, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, I was like, no. She's like, yeah. That's the first one you're gonna memorize, you know? So, and after like, she was like, you know, warming up to me, like, she changed like my whole perception about like how to make music. She was just like very generous as well, which is very unusual sometimes, right? In classical music.
Yeah.
Yeah, she changed my, you know, perception and like perspective. And yeah, she was great.
Most transformative performance experience?
When I got to perform the Reinecke Concerto with a symphony, it was very important to me because it was like less than a year after I moved to the US and I won this concerto competition at James Madison. And to me, it was important not just because like I was going to perform at the honors concert with the symphony, blah, blah, blah. It was so important because when I moved to the US, I had so many problems like with bullying and racism and xenophobia. There was so much.
Sorry about that.
And no, you know, it's life, but it was so much, you know, like, especially my very first 6 months, it was so many problems that like I could never anticipate. I didn't have the tools to deal with so much. Cause you know, like, I mean, I'm kind of digressing a little bit, but essentially what those things are, like racism, xenophobia, bullying, they're just a form of rejection. So I never really had the tools to experience so much rejection all at once. When I won the competition, to me, it just made me feel alive again because like I was already like so not depressed, but like I was so confused with like why I was going through so much. Cause one thing is like when we create our own problems, right? And then you just face the consequences. But like the other thing is when you come to a place or to a situation and the problem is like literally telling you like you don't belong here.
Yeah.
Because of the way you talk, because of the way you look like, because of where you came from. And those messages like being spoken to me on a daily basis, that was a lot. Cause like I was so excited when I moved to the US to do my master's here. And it was like, but there was so much happening when I moved here. But I was sure about myself, about my playing, about my identity. It was very hard. So anyways, winning this competition was great. And then I tried to challenge myself. So I performed the whole concerto from memory, which was so great.
Your teacher would have been proud.
Yes, you know, the fun thing too was like the concert hall was like so packed and people would not stop clapping like after I finished playing, you know? So I remember like I came back on stage like 3 times maybe, you know, and people were like clapping after every movement. It was so great just to feel the energy, you know, because people were like so involved by the music that we were producing at that moment. Like they wouldn't stop. Yeah. And that just to me was just like great just to feel like some positive energy.
Those kinds of moments on stage with whatever background you came into walking on that stage right before, when you get that kind of reception back at you in such a forceful manner, it almost dissipates any of that other baggage that you were
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's
because
like, that's the reward that music brings to us as performers is
exactly because it's like it just feels like your purpose is fulfilled.
Yeah,
you know, you're there and it's the moment you're creating the moment. It's right there, like it's happening right there and people are like reacting to it like right at that moment right there, you know, so like
and that you belong and that people are supporting you.
Exactly. So the message was like so strong and so opposite, so it was great.
Well, I'm sorry that people treated you so horribly when you first came here. That's not what I like to imagine my America being, you know?
Yeah, it's not, it's not everyone, but it was harsh.
Yeah.
Because, it was, Because I was just coming just to play my flute.
Yeah,
You'll
see me in a second. Yeah, see what magic I can do. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
All right. Alternate universe musical instrument?
Cello.
Oh,
absolutely.
There you go.
I always wanted to play the cello.
Yeah.
Always. The thing was just that, my family never could really afford any instrument. Mm-hmm. So, I only played, not only, but basically I started playing the flute because, my family used to go to the church, and the church had, this band, Wind Symphony, and, every year they would, accept, some teenagers, because I started playing the flute very late as well. Mm. So they would, accept, some teenagers, and if you, passed, the music theory classes, you would get an instrument. Gotcha. And at the time, the church did not have a flutist, but they wanted to have someone. Mm. So they bought a flute, and the maestro at the time, he was like, "You are going to play the flute." It was like, okay.
Yeah.
But then, when I went to college and all, I would see, cellists perform or, practice. I always thought, it was the most amazing instrument. The range is so big and, so much passion and, the vibrato is, always, so,
Yeah.
So cello would be absolutely.
So I'm gonna make the joke of and I'm sure I've said this on the podcast a couple times, but one of the stereotypical things I hear when I go, especially when I travel on an airplane, is everyone says, "Don't you wish you played the flute?" Right? But now I'm like, "Don't you wish you played the cello?" Right?
Not when I travel, though.
No, I know, right? So actually, you were doing a beautiful job at segueing into your musical origin story about how did you discover music and the flute, and when did you pursue it professionally? Can you just keep going on that story and share where you are today and how you got there?
So I started playing the flute very late, as I said. I was almost 15 when I started playing the flute, but I come from a musical kind of family because my father is a classical musician as well.
Okay.
He used to play the French horn. He doesn't play anymore. Uh-huh. Now he's retired. Yeah. But he still plays classical guitar as well. Mm-hmm. And he sings as well. Mm-hmm. So that actually, that kind of created a whole thing for me as well. Because, I do sing as well. I play piano as well. So I don't play the flute only. In my minor in college was choir conducting. So I've done a lot of, music directing, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But the thing was that, my family could not afford to buy an instrument for me. So the only way that I could actually get an instrument was, as I said, through this church. So the thing was that I started college very early. So I started college, I was 16.
Wow.
Because I finished high school, I was 15. I was one of those, students that, skip
advanced
some grades. Yeah, I finished high school so early, in comparison to all my friends. And I went straight up to college, and it was already for flute performance. Uh-huh. It was kind of hard because, all my friends were, much older. They were not very happy that someone so young was already in college, performing with them, and sometimes getting their spots when they were already there, for years already,
Yeah.
So, the competition that it's kind of natural, but, before I finished college, there was a position with the Brazilian Marines Wind Symphony. It was a national audition, and I needed a musical job, because at the time I was living in Brasilia, because I'm from Brasilia, the capital in Brazil. But Brazil is very much like DC. It's a lot of public servant jobs, and there's not a lot of culture in terms of music and all that stuff. So I was I need a musical job, So they had this opening. It was a national audition, one spot, and I got the spot. Uh-huh. So I moved to Rio de Janeiro, and then after basic training, I was named their principal flute. Mm-hmm. So I was, principal flute for 4 or 5 years. And then when I was in Rio was amazing for me, in many, many ways. Professionally speaking, that's when I actually started doing my solo stuff. Mm-hmm. Because then I found a pianist that was literally looking for flutists. So we started performing recitals in Rio 3 times a month. And then eventually we had a trio for cello, flute, and piano as well. Because, there's repertoire. But then also I started noticing that although I was already I already had a job. I already, had gone through college. I've never had done competition. So my resume was kind of empty,
I see, yeah.
And then I was already 24. When I joined the Marines, I was 22. But then I was like, I'm already like 24. And like, I was like looking up competitions and we're like,
you might age out.
I was already aging out. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So I started like competing as much as I could. And the good thing was that like, although I wasn't trying to compete, I wasn't comparing myself to anyone else.
Yeah.
I was literally just trying to build myself up. So I literally started winning all of the competitions that I started like,
Wow. Yeah.
And then one of the last ones before I moved to the US was the one that brought me to the US, right? That I said before, it was also national competition. Yeah. So I moved to the US. When I moved here, I did my master's at James Madison. Then I went to Peabody Conservatory as well for another degree. And then I moved to New York. I started teaching general music, some choir as well. And in the meantime as well, I was like performing, like every weekend I was like performing somewhere, or like teaching master classes at universities and all. Next February, for instance, I'm actually going to Texas. I'm going to have a Texas tour. I'm going to visit like 5 college campuses. So yeah, in the US was a little hard though, because like I knew about my playing, but I didn't have money. So like, I had to quit the Marines. I actually had to sue them because they didn't want me to let me go.
Oh.
That's another story.
Whoa,
yeah.
okay.
But they were like, you're not going. I was like, well, I am.
Yeah, you can't keep me here. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
So I had to sue them. So like when I moved to the US, and I never really had family support, like financially speaking or anything, or any like support from an institution, like, as some musicians do, which is great, especially when you move from a country to another one. It's so many challenges. And one of them, the biggest one I would say, it's financial, So like I won a few competitions, but like not the ones that I wanted to join because I just didn't have money, to do the thing. So for some of them, actually, I aged out, like for instance, I've always wanted to join the National Flute Association convention competition. The young artist competition. I was never able to do it because I never had money. You have to pay the competition fee and then the traveling thing and then hotel and then pianist and then recording. And then the convention fee, and then the annual fee. When you put down on the paper, it's a lot of money, and it's a money that I never had. I'm not saying that people only won because they have money. That's not what I'm saying.
But it's also a huge barrier for a lot of people, and
it
talented
is.
People that just simply can't financially scrape up.
No,
independently.
absolutely.
And it's something that I wish that it was not as big of a problem for musicians.
Absolutely. Like, for instance, I always wanted to join, like, for instance, the Kobe competition in Japan, which is one of the biggest flute competitions. I was never able to do it as well because, like, same thing. I would have to travel. I would have to hire pianists. I would have to record and all those things. And when I'm not going to lie, though, like, when I moved to the US, I was making $8,000 a year. Can you imagine living off $8,000 a year?
Yeah, that's hard.
Like, it's below the poverty line.
Yeah.
I was like, doing my master's, like bougie, pursuing my dream and being the US and like, but I was making $8,000 a year.
Yeah.
Like, it was hard, when I was at Peabody, super prestigious school and like one of the best faculty, like, but I was working 3 jobs and then on top of being a full-time student and having to like, play as everybody else, or even maybe better than everybody else. Cause then I didn't have the luxury of like just sitting around and not practice because I was on a scholarship too. And on top of that, like some people don't know, but like for international students, if you get a B in some schools or a C, your visa can get canceled.
Yeah.
I think at JMU, when I was at JMU, a B- almost got my visa canceled.
Jesus.
I had a huge problem with the teacher, but he gave me a B- like for no reason. And that was a huge problem. And they kind of noticed that he was not being fair as well. Yeah. So they created something and I had to redo what I did. And then eventually someone else higher up changed my grade. So they I know. It almost got me, canceled. Not in the way.
I know what you mean, though. Deported, basically.
And that would like change my life, not for the good reason. So that was very challenging. Like, but it's always good to remember when we didn't have much, and then financially speaking, it's so challenging. Like classical music, still so for the elite. It is, it's a reality. Even with all grants and institutions now that like support, like especially like musicians of color or anything like that, it's still very expensive. My flute is expensive. Every time I have to take my flute to the shop, it's like $400.
Yep.
And I have to do that like every 6 months because I'm always performing, so like insurance and this and that, so much money, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how my life has been going. It's a lot of struggle, but like a lot of, fighting. And then, sometimes we win and sometimes, but that's how kind of my journey has been.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing a lot of
absolutely.
those things. And it's just your transparency about your experience being an immigrant to this country, and especially one in music. I feel like oftentimes overlooked or not really, really understood.
Yeah.
So what are some upcoming events that what's coming down the line?
So I have a recital in New York, one this week. Then I have a recital in Chicago, the 23rd.
October.
Then I have another recital. No, that's going to be in November.
Sorry. No, yeah.
And then there's another one here in New York in November. Then a little break for Christmas and all that stuff. So next year, yes, I have a few recitals here in New York, a few in Philly, Baltimore. Right now, trying to organize a tour in Brazil. As well, so I might go like to Rio de Janeiro, like Brasilia, São Paulo probably. And then I also have a tour in Texas in February, and then possibly some things in Connecticut, Florida as well. So like there's a lot of things that are like being planned out as well. My concerts in Europe, I still like, in the air, kind of pending. For now, those are the things that are happening.
In the United States and Brazil.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready to take a break?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we'll be right back. Hey friends, are you enjoying this episode and are excited for more content to come? Consider becoming part of the Hidden Behind the Music Stand family on Patreon. Any contribution level helps keep the podcast alive. That's at patreon.com/hiddenmusicstand. Other ways to support are to recommend episodes to friends and family and to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It's quick, easy, and a free way to spread the word about my fantastic guests and all the incredible accomplishments they achieve in the music world. Also, feel free to reach out to us through social media at Hidden Music Stand and by email hiddenmusicstand@gmail.com. Thanks, and enjoy the episode. Welcome back from the break. So, how did you get into weightlifting?
So, there are two things. So, the first one was actually when I was in the Marines, right?
Yeah,
so, because I went through basic training, that was the first thing. And then the second thing actually was during the pandemic. So, when things started like opening up, because it was, we were home like for so long, like all of us, especially here in New York. And I don't know about like other places, but like New York, the lockdown here was long, So,
New York got hit hard,
Yeah, I know. It was scary. Yeah, so like when the pandemic was a little bit less severe, so I joined a gym. And I was looking for something that would be like kind of CrossFit.
Okay.
But not really, because I don't really like CrossFit because I'm always like afraid of like hurting my hands, like every musician, right? But I wanted something that would be like intense at the same time. So that's when I started it. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I wasn't doing it because like I wasn't feeling good about myself.
Sure.
It was literally something about just like taking care of myself and my mind, and it was very interesting to me. Even the trainers, sometimes they would be like happy because like you see yourself like having progress. But like as a musician, of course, like we practice and that's our goal, right? Always to improve and all that stuff. But like when you get to weightlifting, you don't know exactly how much you can do because it's something completely like you're not really like practicing skills, right? You literally just lifting something, but then you literally just become stronger.
Yeah.
Like every week you're like stronger. I don't feel that as much, but then this week I'm like, I don't know, like lifting like 70 like kilograms, right? Then next week 90. The week after 120. And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So it was something that was like helping me even overcome myself, in terms of like fears or like, and it was something, it just helped me so much. So then I didn't really stop, so I just kept going. And And it's just been so helpful. Sometimes like even, of course, like everyone says that they work out. So like they feel less stressed out, but it's actually real,
the endorphins,
you know?
Yeah.
Because you're moving your body, you know? So like the energy that's like all retained, you know, within you, like for a long time, you're just moving, you're just putting it out, you know? So it's so helpful like for you, for my mind. And of course, like, you know, looking good, of course, it's, you know, it comes with, you know, the process.
Yeah.
But to me, and also because like, you know, I was never like super macho and like, I was never like super like coordinated as well. Although I play the flute.
Well, that's a different kind of yeah.
So to me, it was like about overcoming so many like things that I had in my mind that would be like, oh no, you're not really capable of doing this. You know, you can't really do this. And then you go and you're like, no, I actually can, you know, and I'm doing better than like other, not that I'm comparing myself, but I was like, you know, I'm doing better than people that have been working out like for weeks or something, you know, because I was seeing my progress like so quickly and people like, oh my God, are you already doing this? And we're like, yeah. So like, it's so great because I was never very good at like exercising. Or like gym or like, you know, sports. I'm not a sports person, you know, especially like coming from Brazil. Like people always ask like, you know, you like soccer. And I was like, I'm like, well, not really. I'm like, well, how come? Like you're Brazilian, blah, 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 you know? And I'm like, no, not really. So like, I've never played soccer and that's
a stereotype too, I guess.
Yeah. But that's how I got into it. And it's been so helpful, you know?
Yeah.
And of course, like playing the flute too. It helps so much.
Oh, how do you find it helps the flute?
Posture, breathing, you know, my core is like so much stronger. So like, you know, it's so much better. Just like sound projection. And of course, like it eases my mind. So like when I'm practicing, because I was able to lift like, I don't know, 150 kilograms when I play the flute and I'm like playing this very tough passage. I'm like, no, I actually can do this. You know, I will be able to do this. Cause like I've done something that I was never, like,
never thought
you know,
could.
I never thought. Yeah. And playing the flute is something that I'm like, oh, no, I can't play the flute. No, you know, it's hard as well. But then I'm doing something completely out of my nature, you know, so like, and I'm doing it. So playing the flute is also possible. If I'm doing something that's like
no
completely
excuses.
not. So it's been very, very helpful. I'm not going to lie. It's been very, very helpful.
Yeah. Do you go by yourself or do you have a partner that you go with?
I go by myself.
Oh, okay. Because I assume that you do free weights at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I know that usually you have a spotter in case something goes wrong, right? But
yes. But what I usually do, I usually go for classes. Yeah. So I don't really work out by myself. Of course, like I go by myself, but it's usually like with classes. So like, for instance, there was a gym that the first one that I joined after the pandemic, we had classes. It was only 4 people. And then you had a trainer. So like I have someone just looking up on me and like just seeing if I'm doing correctly and like making corrections and pointing out. Because to me, that's it's the helpful part. Even when they're like, oh, dumbbells, I'm like, what is that? You know, that's not my, you know, my expertise and all that stuff. So that's what I do. I go like for classes, not just like by myself. Even like, for instance, I just joined another gym a few weeks ago and I made that very clear. Like, you know, I'm a flutist. I can't hurt my hands. You know, just put that down already. So like, even like every trainer, they know, you know, when I get there, they're already like, oh, okay, you can do this, but you can't really do this. I'm like, yeah, it's not that I can't, like, because I can't.
You're protected.
But yes, you know, so it's very, very helpful. And one thing that also like was very helpful besides the weightlifting was just like, you know, being in an environment that it's not natural to me. I'm not a bro person and, you know, I'm not a gym rat. So being in an environment that actually was very not familiar to me, actually, it's been so helpful, you know, in every other area, especially playing the flute. You know, because then I get a piece that is like not familiar and I'm like, it's just like you relate the skill. One thing that's been helpful to me is just like how I can actually correlate everything that I'm doing at the same time, even if they're not connected, because it's all basically the same thing. It's just like very different language. It's just very different routines but they all correlate at some point. So that's something that's been very, very helpful.
Yeah. What is your sort of weekly routine of going to the gym?
Right now I'm going less because like concerts are starting to pick up again. But during the pandemic, I was going 5 days a week, 5 or 6. So
and like one
I would go like, Yes. One day will be like strength. The other day will be like training. So it'll be like more still weights, but then it will be more like pulling things or like pushing things instead of just like literally just weightlifting. So that was something I would just literally go like basically every day except for Sunday. And then now I'm going like twice or like 3 times a week.
Have you noticed a difference in how you approach the weights when you were going frequently versus now?
Yes. Now it just seems so much easier. There's just the thing about like just being confident as well. It's something that I sometimes struggle with, you know, feeling like I can do it. You know, not something that would be like, oh my God, I'm like exaggerating the way I'm doing things, but like just feeling like I said before, like I can do this, you know, it's so simple, but it's actually so strange when you're like you're lifting something, it's person. I could literally lift a person, like, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm playing the flute. And to me, that's what's been, I think, like even the most helpful. Just like feeling like I can do something that I'm not really designed to be doing, you know? Because I think like all of us have some kind of, there are things that we can do naturally. And because I was never very natural on like sports or things like that, even when I was in the Marines as well, you know, basic training was hard because like it's intense, but it's also like it's kind of heavy on the body. And like, so it was the thing about like feeling I can do something. It's been the most important thing in this process. Yeah.
For someone that maybe has passively had an interest in starting weightlifting for themselves, but doesn't really have like a good, I don't know, motivation to actually just go for it, what would you say would be sort of a good entry? Either like, is it just getting a personal trainer, or is it joining a class, or like how would you intrigue people to start weightlifting for themselves?
I think joining a class is the most ideal. Also because it's cheaper, right? Because if you pay a personal trainer, that's going to be expensive, you know, because you're going to have the person just for yourself. I think joining a class is great because then you can see other people. They are also struggling sometimes. Yeah. So you're not the only one. You don't feel like, you know, the center of attention unless you want that. But in my case, for instance, I never wanted that. I wanted to be with other people, but also have some kind of help from someone. And also like having I've never really liked having a personal trainer. Maybe for some people that's helpful, but honestly, just joining a class, I think it's the most beneficial because then you see other people, like I said before, sometimes they help you as well, you know, and it brings more a sense of community added to the fact that like you're doing something for yourself, you know, but you're also like doing it with other people around you,
that
you know.
You're bettering yourself as well as the people around. Yeah, everyone is bettering. It's like everything's in good faith and nature kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say that would be the best option.
What is your eventual goal with weightlifting?
You know that I actually don't have a goal with it, like specifically. Like my goal has been literally just like moving myself around.
Just maintaining it is a goal too.
Yes, my goal has been like being sure that my body's in good condition. You know, not just for playing the flute, but like for myself. You know, because it's so important. Like especially, we had a pandemic. Like we talked so much about it, but like it's so important when everything works. Like, you know, your mind is working, your body's working, and you can't correlate. Or one thing that also has been helpful to me is just like knowing my body better. Yeah. You know, because with the weightlifting, you know, I learn about my limits, but then I also learn how I can overcome my limits. Right. That I'm limited, but that doesn't mean that I'm not capable. I mean, we go back to the I can thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But it's true though, you know, I'm limited on something, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be able to be doing that. Yeah. You know, so like, as I said, like I'm lifting, I don't know, 70 kilograms tonight. And then next week, I'm going to be lifting maybe double of it, you know, like because of this, like I'm limited tonight, but tomorrow I'm going to be better than I was yesterday. Yeah. For me, that's been my goal. Yeah. You know, like just to improve myself. It's the thing about like improving myself constantly, not in a ways that I'm competing with other people, but I'm just keeping myself together as a person, you know, so I can't present myself my best self when I'm performing, when I'm with my friends, when I'm with my family. I can actually present myself like my best self, you know, to people, you know, and to myself, you know, instead of like being caught up, like, I don't know, I'm not feeling well today and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes just because I'm not moving myself around, you know, or I'm not, I would say that honestly, that's been the goal. Yeah. And I'm not super young anymore, you know, like people see me or like see my photos and all, and they usually think like I'm not even 30, but I'm 36. Yeah. It's not that I'm getting to a point that like I'm getting old, but
no, but if you start early,
right?
It's only going to be easier for you 20 years or 30 years down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's how people say, right? Like we are living longer as, you know, human race. So like now, like the 30s are the new 20s, right? And the 40s and the new 30s and all that stuff, right? Because we're living a lot longer than we used to. So I don't want to get like to my 40s, like already like looking like I'm 60, you know, or feeling like I'm 60 because I'm so tired. I'm working so much. I'm like full of problems. And that's been my goal, like to keep myself as a person like together.
Yeah. When I've done weightlifting training for myself, I also found that it kind of feeds itself too. That to me, I think the appeal really came from my training in music, that it was very much like similar, like, oh, I can't play this yet, but if I isolate it and work on that very specific, you know, one muscle, like let's say a bicep curl or something, right? That muscle, I'm sure I'm weakening, like literally weakening the muscle just temporarily, but it's going to rebuild and recover when it rests.
That is true. That is
so
true.
That when I get back to, going back to the metaphor of the music, like when I get back to the musical passage that I'm isolating and working on, it's going to work a lot better.
Yes.
So that was just like, for my personal experience, was just very fun because I think I suppose I just like the idea of practicing. I think most musicians do. That's right. Yeah. Right? Because it is like a workout in some ways. You're mentally working out, and with your little muscles working out something.
Yes.
Or your sorry, for me it's my hand muscles. I mean for you too, but your lips are a part of it too. Your embouchure.
Yeah.
but that there's like, it's like a puzzle, and the way that weightlifting is also somewhat of that kind of idea too. Of like, okay.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I think that that's also maybe for a musician as well, who like maybe is like slightly like, I don't know if weightlifting's for me. I'd say, well, just think of it like practicing, and that every day you come back and you try it, you know, you work on, you know, you might do like upper body and lower body, and then like abs are.
Oh no, absolutely. Right? Like, because my goal has never been like to be like super like muscly and like, you know, like a I don't know. Yeah, looking like Thor, you know. That's not my goal, you know, like it's like you're saying, like, you know, just improving myself as a person, like, you know, and just putting all together, like, you know, using all that stuff like to my own benefit, you know, because I don't know, it's just a matter of like taking care of yourself, but not just in a ways that's like for people or like for another motive. It's like I said, like it's just to keep myself functioning because it's important. Like, you know, we have our bodies and we need to keep it, you know, working somehow. So that's how I got, like, I'm not gonna lie though, I was very afraid. Like when I started like weightlifting, you know, I was afraid. Like I was afraid of like getting hurt, or like afraid of not being capable, afraid of like, you know, at some point I would be like, you know, this is just too much and I'm gonna have to stop. But then no, it was awesome. You know, it just made me feel like better, and like, so it's been great. Yeah.
Well, is there any last thoughts you wanted to share about your experiences weightlifting?
I think like most importantly, like just make sure, especially for us musicians, just make sure you're taking care of your hands. Like, you know, it's not a bad thing to bring something else to protect your hands. A lot of the machines at the gyms, like they're not really designed to protect our hands. So even when you know, you do even a simple thing like a pull-up, you do like 10, or you do like a series of like 10, like 3 times, whatever. When you finish, your hands are going to be hurt. And as you do constantly, you're going to have like things on your hands. So I would say one thing that's very important, like if you want to do it, protect your hands. Just be like, you know, I'm glad that the gym that I just joined, they're just very like not ashamed of anything. So like they literally just tell us whenever we need, they're like, oh no, just use this or use that. because it's gonna hurt. At the same time that it's gonna be super beneficial for the body, it can actually hurt. You know, like so many people hurt their hands. But I think it's just, it makes you stronger. It makes you better in so many ways. And if you can't find like a gym that's like you're fit, just find some people that, you know, there's ways, I feel like, to find your community the way you like to be, the way, you know, you want to be seen, or, you know, but I think it's just very beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially for us, like, there's no impact. Right? Because like, it's not like playing soccer or like playing volleyball. Because I broke my hand once playing volleyball.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So that's why I don't play sports at all. Playing sports is so fun. You know, I've never played like professionally, but I loved just playing with my friends, like playing volleyball and all this stuff. But I broke my hand. So of course, like some people love swimming. I hate swimming.
Gotcha.
So
yeah.
I don't like swimming. I don't like running. So like to me, that's why weightlifting for me is like perfect. At my spot, I'm just doing something for my body, and then I go home, and that's beautiful. You know, you know, there's no like, I don't know, you get sweat and all this stuff, blah, 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 like, but I'm not like, you know, wet, because if I'm swimming, I'm gonna be wet, right? I don't like, I'm not wet. If I'm like running, I'm gonna be, you know, I may fall, you know, so like weightlifting, I'm literally at the gym, I'm just like, you know, doing my stuff. There's someone watching over me, like, to see if I'm gonna do anything wrong. So like, to me, weightlifting is like just perfect. You know?
Well, great. I'm so happy that you found that for yourself, and that, you know, it's making you feel better. It's making the mental clarity come through for you, and, you know, best wishes to your future with weightlifting.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask you two final questions?
Yes, absolutely.
What is one piece of advice you would tell your younger self about entering and pursuing a career in music?
I would tell myself to find community as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Always to find community. Musical community, whatever type of community. That's been so important. I've moved a lot. Like, you know, I was in Brazil, I was in Brasilia, then I moved to Rio, then I moved to Virginia, then I moved to Baltimore, then I came to New York. The pandemic happened, and, you know, basically feels like I'm starting over in New York again. But one thing that's been making a huge difference is community. You know, like having community. It just makes life better, easier. So one thing that I would say, and I'm saying this because like it was not always easy to find community. And you know, and sometimes because of my own struggles, I couldn't really find community as much. But you know, if you look just a little bit, you're gonna find people, you know, just support you in simple ways. I love Brené Brown. And you know, one of the things that she says is that we are designed for connection. And I absolutely agree with that. You know, as musicians, as artists, as people, like finding community is the most important thing. Like, so I would say that's one of the things that I would say to my young self, you know, to always look for community. Well, now you're part of the Hiding Behind the Music Stand community. So welcome. Thank you.
And my second question, how has the pandemic changed your career?
Oh my God. It made me rethink about many things. It made me replan many things. It made me realize as well many things. It made me doubt myself. It made me empower myself. It made me look for community. But I would say like, in a quick answer, like it was just sad to not being able to perform. You know, it wouldn't matter how. You know, I had concerts all over, blah, blah, blah. But like just not being able to perform, that was like as if someone would be like trying to shut me out, you know, like put their hand in my mouth and they'll be like trying to talk and they'll be like, no, you know, you're not going to talk. That was the most sad thing. And of course, like we were all doing like online performances, but not my God.
I know that definitely filled the void, but I just hope that we'll never have to do that again.
I know that was
tough.
Absolutely horrible. You know, not even practice for yourself is so painful. Like, you know, I don't like it. Maybe some people do. I just don't like it. But that's how it really like changed everything. In terms of like personally speaking, it just made me think of like how I can be an artist and have a voice and be a musician without having to go through the channels that were presented to me previously, meaning like you're only a musician if you play in an orchestra. You're only a musician if you teach at a college. You're only an excellent musician or a respected musician if you do this or if you do that.
Right.
And then during the pandemic, we were all the same.
Yeah.
And some of us were even like in worse situations than others, because like some of us had this like very prestigious jobs. And then at some point, the institutions would be like, well, we don't have money. We're not paying anyone. So it made me rethink a lot of things. Not that I felt like, not encouraged to do things, but it just made me realize that like there is more to do than just pursuing this path that was designed like 50 years ago, for instance, and that like music is alive and still here, and it can be done in many ways, financially speaking, even. It just made me rethink so much, and reevaluate how I would see myself and how I would see my worth and, my musicianship, my artistry, all that stuff. You would depend on, winning an audition or not. And I mean, even my album came out of that kind of mentality, because it was like, enough is enough. I know who I am and I need to put my music out, and it's what I am. I'm an artist. I'm a flutist, but most of all, I have a message. I have a voice. And if I don't tell that to myself, no one else can, no one else will. So I think it changed a lot on that kind of sense,
Well, thank you for your responses again. Can you remind us about your website, social media, your album, and all the things just one last time, so that if we really missed it before, we get it this time.
Thank you. Yeah. So my website is just my name.com. So GUILHERM as Mary E. Andreas, ANDREAS.com. Of course, like my Instagram is also Andreas, GUIME, or Andreas Gimme. My album, Romantic Music for Flute and Piano, is called Beyond Bossa Nova. So it's all over all streaming platforms. Physical copies are coming soon. Hopefully I'm going to be able to publish this music as well. I'm trying to publish the music that, I recorded it, because that's the goal, like to share. The music's not for me. It's for everyone. So that's something that's coming up as well at some point. So yeah, any of those channels.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andreas.
Yeah.
For joining me today. Thank you so much. And for reaching out. And I'm so thrilled to now have met you and have learned your entire lineage in music.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you for, listening, because I like to talk.
Thanks again. And thanks for listening. Say bye, Sushi.